Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Okay, my friends, once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J.C. McCauley, along with the champions of talk. So let's get underway. We are joined by none other than the one and only Dr. Mya Bowen. Good morning, Dr. Bowen. How are you doing?
Oh, good morning, good morning, good morning. I am doing fabulous on this slightly rainy Wednesday, and summer officially kicked off yesterday, June 21st, and so find myself here thinking about finalization of a project based on a faculty development workshop that I played a role in, and so it's a team project, and so I got to add my part to it in order for us to finalize what it is that we got started.
All right, so a development workshop. So what is walk me through this? What is the development workshop?
Yeah, so this faculty development workshop is all about race, ethnicity, diversity, inclusion, as well as belongingness. And so here's where it really gets very interesting in my eyes. Basically, we have to look at the dynamics of our classroom in terms of the race and ethnicity of our students and determine whether it is that their grades earned are impacted by said race and ethnicity.
That's interesting. That's very, very interesting.
So it's been a very interesting dynamic for me, because it is that I personally do not believe that one's race impacts their ability to learn. And so they're coming in from a different dynamic where with specific research, the belief is that it is a factor that plays a role in the outcomes of success for said students in higher education.
That's interesting. That's very, very interesting. All right, cool. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it is. My thing is that, if we extract race and ethnicity, there are other variables that actually play a role in the success of students, right? Mainly from the perspective of the students' ability to take ownership of their role as the learner. Okay. And now we're not just talking about any learner, we're talking about an adult learner. And so the go-to concept is pedagogy, right? And so pedagogy is really and truly about the development of our youth and their mindset. However, andragogy is all about the adult learner. And so one of the things that I have in my back pocket is how it is that we integrate the concept of andragogy when it is that we're talking about adult learners, instead of leaning on a default of pedagogy.
So dealing with adults is different than dealing with children.
Absolutely. You've got two different groups of individuals, one being minds that are under development from the perspective that they don't have the same type of life experience or responsibilities, versus adults who have been exposed to a whole lot more and now need to have a better understanding of how to shift into applying concepts related to whatever their career focus is or next steps are in life.
Okay, so adult learners, as you say, have all kinds of issues that they bring to the table. They're married, they've got kids, they've got their job. They may be in transition from one job to the next. So is there a difference between the, let's say, let me rephrase the question. What age group is the adult learner?
So if we want to keep things consistent with how our laws are structured, 18 and up would be the adult learner, right? And so we both know that between the ages of 18 to 25, minds are still under development, but per the law, they are adults. So those would be our traditional to non-traditional learners in our system, related to whether or not those individuals actually went straight from high school into college. So if you're going from high school into college, you would be considered a traditional learner. If you are beyond the high school years and have been out of the educational system for quite a while, you'd be considered a non-traditional learner.
Non-traditional learner. Okay, so that's that I guess then is the differentiator or the thing that the dividing line. All right,
Yes.
so the non-traditional learner and the traditional learner. So the traditional learner is coming out of high school, going into college. The non-traditional learner is the one who's in college. I remember when I was going to school for aviation maintenance, and I would be the traditional learner, along with a small group of us. It was about maybe 3 or 4 of us that came right out. We went to I went to technical school and took aviation maintenance in the 11th and 12th grade, and then went from there to the post high school with the Upper Bucks School of Aviation Maintenance Technology. And so we went right from high school into this, into learning how to, maintain work and all that other kind of stuff, and for aircraft and aviation. But most of the students in the class were like 30 years old. They were ex-GI. There were people transitioning from one career to another, but they were like 30, and which seems awfully young now. But at the time, they seemed like grown, like that, like they were old to us, because we were like 17, 18, 19, and very interesting, particularly now when I think back on it, because we were kids.
Right.
I mean, we were not even kids. We were children, and we acted like children, in retrospect. They were adults, and they acted like adults in the class. So it must have been an interesting dynamic for the teachers, or our instructors. And this is all retrospect now, because until this conversation, I hadn't given it a second thought on how we as 18 and 19-year-olders were rather childish, I guess, in the eyes of the 30-year-olds. Because I remember the very reason I am in Hartford is because we, as a class, as a school, we did several tours of different companies. Lycoming, which makes piston engines, aircraft engines. We went to Chesnick, which makes props. They make propellers, but they're made out of wood. And we went to Pratt & Whitney here in Hartford. So we came up to Hartford from just outside of Philadelphia. And I remember distinctly them taking care of us like we were children. They were looking out for us, make sure that nothing happens to the little fellas, all that kind of stuff. And they put their arms around us and were very protective. And I see that as a big difference now. So if you have college kids coming out of high school, their mindset is totally different than the person who's been at work for maybe 10 years, realizes this is not what they want to do, and they're taking a whole nother course.
Absolutely. In a former career path, when I was at the University of Hartford as a coordinator, I would actually review as the college evaluator students' progress through the program. And this was Hillier College, which is part of the University of Hartford. It's the 2-year cohort that gives students who may have not had the best start in terms of high school repertoire. They give them an opportunity to, quote unquote, prove themselves academically. And so with that being said, I've come across several students, as you can imagine, out of, I want to say approximately 550 students that, being traditional students, they would, either excel, fall somewhere in between, or not. And so from the perspective that a 17, 18, 19-year-old may not want to take part in the academic journey, it tells the tale per the types of grades that they actually receive. It tells the tale based on their attendance, which leans right back into the faculty development project that I'm working on as a team, where we're taking consideration their race as well as attendance, as well as participation in class and some other factors. And so the mindset plays a huge role in how it is that behaviors come across as participatory or non-participatory, as well as being in attendance and choosing not to be in attendance in a class. The dynamics span between your traditional student as well as your non-traditional student. For example, the traditional student may not know what he or she wants to do in terms of a career, where they see themselves in the next 5 years. But you can still have that same type of mindset for a non-traditional student as well. However, the caveat is that one must look at every individual uniquely as said individual in order to determine whether or not they have the mindset of what it is that their end game is, right? So I like to tell my students, you will not be a student here forever. So you need to start to think about where it is that you see yourself as it is that you transition from class to class. And so then the journey with an instructor such as myself begins in terms of posing those questions so that they can think about them in their off time to begin their own introspection as to how it is that they're going to play a role in their academic journey and beyond.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating. There's a lot going on in juggling for teachers and instructors, and analyzing all of the different students, and then tests, and then grading the test relative to the student, and but it seems to me that as I'm listening, that this really is an individualized, it's almost like making custom clothes. You're not dropping into JCPenney and you're getting something off the shelf. This is being tailored for every individual who comes into the class. You've got everyone there, but at the same time you have, out of 30 people, out of 15 people, whatever, they're individuals. And so it would go way beyond what color they are, but more into how they process and how they think.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
That takes a real skill set. I consider teachers as a gift. To me, it's a gift. Teaching is a gift more than it is something you just decide you want to up and do. So, it's like being an entrepreneur. Some people are good at it and others would like to be, but just aren't. And, you got to have the right teacher. It seems to me.
It's like going back to your example on tailoring. For example, if you went into the men's warehouse and they presented you with a suit that was designed for Shaquille O'Neal, that's going to take a lot of tailoring to get that suit to actually fit you, Stan.
You got that right.
Right. So, there's not a one size fits all.
Right.
There's not a one size fits all. And so when initially I began to teach, within the first couple of semesters at the University of Hartford, they gave me the opportunity to be a accounting and adjunct instructor. And from that, I had a student nominate me for Who's Who in teaching. And that came as a huge surprise to me because I hadn't been doing it long. However, my student saw something in me that prompted him to actually nominate me. And that we're going back almost like, I want to say about 17 or 18 years ago. And so ever since then, I've been, you know, really honing in on becoming the best type of instructor that I possibly can through my own introspection and, looking at what went well, what didn't go well, what I could try to bring to the table in terms of a diverse learning experience, especially when it comes to the students who have to engage in computer science, because I'm an instructor in information systems technology. I'm finding that giving a multiple choice exam is not conducive to what it is that students will be experiencing in a real life scenario. I have to bring out their critical thinking skills by coming up with project-based exams, midterm as well as final exams, because I want them to think about solving a problem so that it is that with their maturity of the knowledge that they've received in my class as well as other classes, they can then be able to bridge the gap between the classroom to the career. So it's project-based learning, henceforth and forevermore for me. No more of those multiple choice questionnaires that, they could pretty much just Google the answer for. Nope, you're going to produce something that comes from within based on what you take in as your understanding of the knowledge that was presented and applied to a project. And that's what industry does. They want problem solvers, and the question is, can you problem solve? And they're not issuing out grades. They're issuing out assessments in terms of promotions as well as employee evaluations. So it's a stark dynamic going on there where a lot of students just want to get the A. However, just because you got the A doesn't mean that you know anything about how to go about problem solving.
Wow, that would be a great way to do all kinds of assessment and teaching. Can you produce? Because at the end of the day, looking up an answer is totally different from deriving or getting to the answer. So, where's the practical?
Right.
I remember in aviation class, our tests were always theory and practice. Mm-hmm. Do you know the theory? And then can you actually do the work?
Right.
I always use that's my example. Theoretically, I know how to change a tire. I can change a tire. The problem is I don't have the weight or enough strength to get the lug nuts off the wheel. So it don't matter what if you can't get the wheel off the car so that you can change it.
That's where teamwork makes the dream work, right? And so another component is interweaving the dynamic of teamwork, because I think for the most part we've individualized projects, but from the perspective of industry, you need other individuals to get certain things done, and everybody brings their own strengths to the team. And so my next step is to hopefully skillfully and creatively interweave how it is that my students will be working as teams of 2 or 3 in order to get those projects done. So it's going to be a team effort for certain types of assignments.
Wow, that's really cool. That is cool. All right, so we have adult learners. We have adult learners who are traditional learners, and adult learners who are non-traditional learners, and of course we have young people and whose minds are developing. So my sister, she won't get mad at me if I tell her age because she doesn't watch this program. She lives in Pennsylvania, but she won't be too upset even if she feels. She's younger than I am. She's 60. Okay. And so, that sounds odd if I look at it in terms of she's 60. She doesn't look 60 to me. And to me, she's always my little sister. Although I was always shorter than her in stature until after I graduated high school. And she used to call me her little brother, which irritated me to no end. It's my little brother, Stanley. Oh, goodness. So, nonetheless, she's going to nursing school.
Okay.
And she often talks about, the 30-year-olds in her class. And they're like, she looks at them like they're just like they're children that can barely be tolerated.
Takes a lot of patience to have the younger generation in the classroom, which there's a strength and a weakness imposed upon the dynamics of that mix, but also from the instructor's perspective, you all are here to learn. And so trying that classroom management aspect is a whole nother dynamic that has to be both creative and skillful in order to allow for the learning process to actually occur, because there's this, it has to be this understanding amongst everyone in the classroom, including the instructor / facilitator, of what the purpose is. And without a identified purpose being laid out at the beginning, I think you'll see the stark contrast between how it is that the process of both teaching as well as learning occurs, because those are two different dynamics when it is that you're dispensing information, and then for the learner taking in all that information, synthesizing it, and then identifying how you can use it from a practical perspective. It's a lot of variables going on. This is why I call life, or I view life now, as a moving algebraic equation.
Okay. Wow. All right. So, the learning process. Of course, as you always say, the learning never ends.
Never ends.
It never ends. Never ends.
Yep. Exactly.
Critical thinking skills. I think that we have seen, unfortunately, a worst case scenario in the inability to think critically in what happened in Texas as it unfolds, the abject failure and total debacle of the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. It's like everyone, we've come to a place where, and I think this is, not only was it a disaster in the moment of an action, but I think it is a manifestation of a bigger problem that we have in this country, in that people have been so managed and they are so afraid of doing something that they're not supposed to, that they now won't do anything, and they don't think anymore. We're not only don't do critical thinking, we don't think. We're just waiting for someone to tell us what to do. And if we don't get that input, then we will wait.
Well, interestingly enough, my background screen reflects Yoda. He's a wise one. So this is baby Yoda. However, he does eventually age. And so he has one of these sayings, which is noted as number 1 out of 10. Do or do not, there is no try. Do or do not, there is no try. So where it is that we see ourselves right now, we have been complacently absorbed. So we've absorbed complacency as the new norm. However, what we neglect is understanding that consequences arise whether you do something or do not do something.
Mm.
So there's going to be consequences either way. There's going to be outcomes. So if you look at consequences, swap out consequences in terms of the term and put in outcomes. There's going to be outcomes no matter whether or not action is taken or no action is taken. And so where it is that Uvalde has individuals that are trained and equipped to address said situations that actually happened. The issue lies in those individuals. It's those individuals that had the responsibility and were put into leadership positions to make those calls that did not do anything. Now, if you're sitting back looking at what's going on and you choose not to act, when you're in a position to act, sadly to say, the blood technically is on your hands, because regardless of the decision that you make, the outcomes are going to produce themselves, whatever those may be. So if you're questioning, well, I might make the wrong move, or no, the thing that is imperative at any juncture point is to decide what to do. Deal with the consequences in terms of whether it was right or wrong afterwards. Lives need to be saved. If you don't act on saving those lives, then you have egregiously not done your job. Why are you in the position? Why were you? I mean, like, really and truly, like, if you've been trained, you're equipped, why didn't you make a call to go in, like, guns blazing?
Right. Because
you're equipped to do that. You already know that your job is technically full of unknowns. You already know that. You know that at the end of the day, based on what you come across, there's a possibility of you losing your life in the line of duty. You signed up for it. Nobody forced you to do that.
That's the job.
You made a decision to be a part of a career that would require for you to, at some point, sacrifice possibly your life. You already know that going in. You know that going in. So when it is that a situation like Uvalde is presented and you decide not to do something, anything to prevent the loss of life or multiple lives, blood is on your hands based on that, because it's like you should have been doing something. You can't just sit back and not do anything. What's the point of you being in a position if you're just going to be an outsider looking at?
Well, you said so you equipped and
skilled. Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that we're seeing a systemic problem. This is a manifestation of it. I hope people don't look at this as I hope people look beyond this, or look deeper into this incident and see how it happens, that it is further than that. It's a systemic problem. It's not isolated to this.
Right.
Because do or do not, it manifests itself everywhere where we have complacency, we have gross, almost criminal incompetence, where people are just not functioning and performing to a standard that's even remotely acceptable. I mean, it's like a race to the bottom. So people really should be held accountable to the degree that they're, a dereliction of duty. Whether it's the police officer, firefighter, whether it's the corporate executive, whether it's the teacher, whether it's the administrator, whether it's an elected official or an appointed individual. People are not delivering. And it seems for too long, everybody's been okay with that. With just not delivering. I'm not going to do nothing. That's not my job. So we've come to a place where no one is going above and beyond. Never mind above and beyond. They may show up to work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do work. Which comes back down to what one of our underlying themes is of leadership.
Yeah. In law, there's something called gross negligence. And so I just pulled up a definition. Gross negligence is the lack of slight diligence or care or a conscious, voluntary act or omission in reckless disregard of a legal duty and of the consequences to another party. So if this doesn't fall under gross negligence, then I don't know what does. But I would see this as gross negligence on the part of leadership in terms of their decisions. I mean, in leadership, and this is wild, because if we start really looking at leadership, because we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago related to leadership versus management and all that good stuff. But, management really and truly makes sure that the status quo remains the same. But leadership has a vision, and they actually are going to set the standard as to how things are done. So they're modeling the way. And so if it is that leadership in this particular situation did not pursue a course of action as was not deemed satisfactory in terms of the types of outcomes, there is a systematic problem, and the question becomes where does the onus lie in having individuals understand that with every action, there is going to be some type of outcome, but also making sure that you understand that taking ownership becomes part of what is involved when you make a particular decision. So, for example, if it is that someone committed a crime and they were brought up on those charges, they themselves, not their family members, have to stand before the judge to take the ownership of said crime and then do the time. Their family doesn't get locked up with them. It's them themselves. So it's an individual type of ordeal that we are looking at in terms of taking ownership of one's thoughts and actions. Understanding that none of us is perfect, but when we're in positions of leadership, we have to be aware of our responsibility for taking certain risks, no matter what the outcomes are. I mean, the outcomes are going to come regardless. If we do nothing, there's outcomes. If we do something, there's outcomes. But being, I guess, brave and courageous to understand that in that position, it's coming regardless. It is coming.
Risk adverse. People are risk adverse, and and I can understand someone not wanting to make the wrong decision. When the wrong decision is going to bring about cataclysmic disaster. But it would seem that people are more leaning toward not taking certain risks because they almost don't want their feelings hurt because someone's going to say the wrong thing about the decision they made. Not that there's some sort of negative, a drastic error, but they don't want to be criticized or talked about.
Oh, they're gonna be talked about regardless.
Right. So so there's going to be a consequence or an outcome. Mm-hmm. So if you make a decision, you have more control over the outcome than if you sit and do nothing. Plus, every minute that you wait brings you closer to the event horizon. So if you're sitting in the middle of the road and here comes a truck, should you get out of the road or should you stay? If I get out of the road, I might jump into a lane and get hit by another car. It's, I'm taking this very, very basic. Now, the longer you stay there, the less time you have to recover from maybe a bad decision. Right. But you got to do something.
Got to do something.
A friend of mine, the 15-second version, I was given an option to do something. And it was a very gracious offer. And so I says, well, look, it's good. I'm good. I mean, either way, it's okay. It's good enough. It's good. And his response was, you know what good enough is? And I was like, what? He said, not good enough. Good enough means it's not what you really want. It's what you'll settle for. Okay. Since it's good enough, at some point, the realization that it isn't what you want is going to surface. Okay. So don't settle for good enough. Ever. Make it what you want it to be from the start. Do or do not. Don't monkey around with the middle here. If we're going to do it, let's do it. Do it right. Get it done. As opposed to, or walk and let someone else do it. Right. But this middle ground, this lukewarmness that we find ourselves at as a nation, and to take, we're so polarized and so one-sided to the other that there's no longer a room for the middle ground, like to compromise and to come to some sort of mutual place is some sort of crime. And as long as we don't try to work together to move things forward as best we can for everybody, I see things we're going down the hill quickly.
Right. Just thinking about in the classroom. So I'm going to take it. It's been a long time since I've been an elementary student. I was one of the, top-notch students in the class, and, from time to time, individuals would like for me to have given them the answers. And I would be like, no, I did the studying, and I'm not like my brother, Nate Jr., where, things just come to it. I was jealous. I was like, how come that can't be me? I'm the one that's up beyond midnight doing homework, whereas he'll get up early in the morning and just and still get an A. I'm like, you know what? Okay. All right. I had to do a little bit more work. So for me, all the work that I actually put in, I wasn't sharing. Now, think about this dynamic in terms of classroom learning. If it is at the lower grades that we really and truly started emphasizing team efforts, students learn from each other, right? Because they're all at different levels, but they can learn from each other through engaging in specific type of projects. Obviously, taking a exam related to some spelling words would be something that you'd be doing individually. However, with regard to beginning to take out the individualism of the learning process and putting in its stead a team dynamic, we could begin to see individuals wanting to work with each other to bridge gaps where it is that certain strengths are found among the members to make the whole stronger is a dynamic that should actually be something that would be possibly a paradigm shift, specifically in the public school structure. Because for me, it's It's odd that it would take so long as to implement a minor change without there being so much paperwork involved and community buy-in. And I'm like, it shouldn't be that hard. It should be, okay, let's do something different and try it. If it doesn't work, let's tweak it and keep working at it. It's an ongoing cycle. It shouldn't be like, oh, I have to send in paperwork to ask for this change order in terms of in terms of things going on within the classroom or in terms of things going on within a school, because your principal is the leadership in the school, right? And so I would think that embracing community in terms of being the lead person, you should have energy and passion and compassion and empathy and be willing to communicate and have an open-minded growth mindset, whereby I will allow my teachers to do what they need. I will get them the resources to have it done, right? And I think that the energy and success flows from the top down. Where there is a lack of energy, that's felt in that overall environment. And so it does start from the top, because think about it. If it is that Niagara Falls had water that was sullied with contaminants, as it flowed downwards, guess who those contaminants land on? Anybody underneath. And so when it is that we start to look at leadership, how it is that you go about representing self within an organization to set the standard, to be a model for others in order to create other leaders, right? So that everything is not all on your shoulders, but you do set that example. It's imperative that individuals take leadership or have an understanding of what leadership really involves. And that right there, pretty much in my mind, is the question. Do individuals in leadership positions understand what the responsibility is in regards to being a leader? If the question is no, then they should really, really rethink being in that position, besides just having a title, because leadership is more than just a title. Because if you're a manager in a leadership position, yeah, well, we know how that turns out. Anyways.
It generally doesn't turn out well.
Right.
The only time manager in a leadership position turns out well is when the manager doesn't actually have to do their job as a leader.
Right.
Because once that opportunity presents itself, you can tell that that they're ill prepared. Ill prepared.
So, question: Elon Musk, is he a manager or is he a leader?
I would say he's a visionary leader.
Yes. And there's different types of leadership, right? You've even got the scope of leadership in terms of types. And so, yes, he is a visionary. And so with him being a visionary, he has to be able to communicate to his team what that vision is. The question then becomes, does he get the buy-in from everybody? Not necessarily, because we could tell by the stakeholders not aligning with him in terms of his potential purchase of Twitter.
Right. Right.
Right. But you have to be willing to understand and open to understand that you're not always going to get buy-in by those individuals that you are leading. However, with you being in that position, you have to still go about presenting the model and standard, but it has to be communicated in a way that that individuals understand where it is that you are leading them to, in order for there to be a moment of persuasion for individuals to kind of get aligned, right? Really get aligned with that vision.
That's very true, and a lot of times, you're the leader is leading a group that is moving in a direction. I think Elon's a little different in that he's the visionary. He has, and he's also an engineer and an inventor. So the people, his team is helping to make his vision real. And so those who don't buy in, there's less a necessity for buy-in from those around him, because I'm paying you to buy in. And if you don't want to come to work, that's fine. We'll lighten the load and let some of the other PhDs come to work. We don't need you holding us back. But in some instances, you have to know when not to move. You have to know when to slow down, because you can't afford to lose anyone. Right. You can't afford to lose, because I think that many times you don't have buy-in, because everyone's not going to agree all the time. I think some of the problem is that leaders want to be everybody's friend when they can't be.
Right. That's crucial.
Right. And people will respect and understand, though they may not be aligned with you in this moment, if you deliver.
Right.
And so if you are having trouble buying in, set goals that are more attainable, or success metrics that are closer to, further away from the event, so that people can see that it's working. Right. Don't make it so grand that they can't buy and won't see it and will fall out. Right. So if you good leaders will help people realize that your investment is one of trust. I'm not going to betray it. Right. So stick with me on this and hold me accountable. If you have any questions at any time, ask, and I'll walk you through it. But this is going to work. And I think when you explain stuff like that to people, they'll go with you. They may not. And then, of course, when you're wrong, admit it.
Right.
And I think a lot of times leaders, they don't want to be wrong, as though leadership is about being right. It isn't. Leadership is not about being right. It's about leading toward the objective, right, in a way that will that the deliverable can be effective, efficient, and all those kinds of things. And I think leaders are so they're so trying not to be wrong. This is not about being wrong. That more in the manager mindset.
Right.
Analysis
best practices. Paralysis.
Oh God.
Analysis paralysis, right? So, the ownership. So I've used ownership in terms of our students taking ownership in their learning process, instructors taking ownership in their facilitation and instruction, and now leadership taking ownership and the understanding that you're not going to be right all the time, and taking ownership and knowing that you're not always going to need individuals to really like you, but you do need to be able to communicate both in words, in actions, as well as in visual, right? Image, a weighty value in what it is that individuals that are looking at you presenting as short-term and long-term goals, so that it is that they can wrap their minds around it, right? The respect of the leadership position should be there. However, we all know that it's not always there. However, if you're going to be a part of the team, you should be working towards making sure that those short-term and long-term goals are getting accomplished. Otherwise, you want to cease and desist in being in that position or with that organization so that you do not become the obstructor of said goals and objectives. Easier said than done, right? Talking about, the paperwork involved and the intricacy of, building, I guess, a strong case for dismissal. It's like, take ownership. If you really don't want to be somewhere, own up to that. If if it is what it is, right? And move on. Get out of the way. Don't obstruct. I mean, we all are adults here, so let's make some decisions. Let's put on our big boy and big girl pants and, really and truly, I guess, be level-minded about it, but also understand that we all have a role in this to play together. Hence, teamwork makes the dream work. If we look at the 1990s championship Bulls, had Pippen and Rodman and Kerr not worked with Michael Jordan in terms of teamwork, then they wouldn't be the championship Bulls that we know of, right? So everybody has a position that they must play, as well as contributions that have to be made per the position that they play. Not rocket science.
No, it is not rocket science. Although you would think it is.
Oh, yeah.
For many, actually, you know what? For many, it is rocket science, I think. That's the problem. It's rocket science for a whole lot of folk. It's Morning Talk. Dr. Mya Bowen's joining me. We'll take a short break, and then we'll be right back. Stick and stay, and we'll be back.
Every bad political decision is made by a politician elected to office. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just remember this. There are people sitting with politicians in a back room making deals about your future, making policies about your children, making decisions about your neighborhood. To them, you are just a vote. You are not their charity. You are not their cause. You are just a vote. Elections have consequences, and if you don't vote, you are actually voting to keep these people in power to work against you. Now, more than ever, you need to make your vote count. Declare your independence from the plantation of party politics and free your political mind.
It's Ralph the Squirrel. He is part of the Squirrel Underground. Using spycraft old school, they bury the information in acorns and posit them around the city for pickup and analysis later on in the day. This Ralph is outside. That's code name, like 00 agents, Ralphs. The Ralphs are sitting around the city. He's assigned to 550 Main Street. He's looking inside the office of the mayor. Taking notes. There's another Ralph sitting over on Capitol Avenue, spying out the governor's office. It's Morning Talk, where we have more fun than human beings should be allowed to have. I'm here this morning with Dr. Mya Bowen, and we are unpacking things as we just have our weekly conversation. And so she's here with us each and every Wednesday. All right. Luis Delgado's usually here at the 9 o'clock hour. He had a commitment this morning, so he won't be joining us this morning, but he'll be here next week. So we continue with Dr. Bowen. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's interesting. We have a lot to consider in regards to a lot of different things, right? But as I woke up this morning, grateful to have 10 toes down, be 6 feet above, I started thinking about wisdom versus knowledge and how it is that I can unpack it for myself to really understand. And so, if it is that I read 10 books, let's say related to Kung Fu, I would be acquiring knowledge related to the art of defense using Kung Fu. Now, my next question is, how do I tie in what wisdom is? And so wisdom really and truly, in my mind's eye, is the ability to put into action what is that I've learned, right? So they say that there is power in wisdom, but the true power is really and truly being able to apply what it is that you know in specific circumstances, because you can have all the knowledge pertaining to every book that you've ever read, but until you actually apply it, you have really not the true essence of making it practical in your life, right? And it's a wild dynamic, because when I start thinking about the development of curriculum in schools, whether it's in our elementary and middle and high school, and then the transition into higher education, if it is that the students don't connect it to how it's relevant in their everyday life, then it's like, how much of a waste of time was that for them to be given that type of information, whereas it doesn't really apply to what they need on a day-to-day basis, which it gets me to thinking, how relevant is the curriculum in all regards of the academic journey of a learner, from our young ones all the way to our adult learners. And so that's why it is that I draw upon the introspection of my own practice as an instructor and facilitator, because at the end of the day, how are they going to be able to use this information? How can I relate this to them whereby they understand the value of it as we go through our 15-week cycle in higher education? I let them know, look, you're not going to be an expert. You can't do that in 15 weeks unless you're some type of savant, right? Some type of genius where you really get it and you're good. But you're going through this journey to be exposed to it and then decide how you're going to be utilizing it now and beyond this class. And so Again, it goes back to communication, having individuals understand the purpose of the course, and then setting short-term and long-term objectives and goals from them to start to realize and take ownership of as it is that they take their academic journey. Because I could dispense the information, but what they do with it is going to be incumbent upon how it is that they view it to add value to their lives.
Practical application. How one puts into practice what one knows.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If you can't put it into practice, then I would say one would lack wisdom. You're like a dictionary or you're like Google. Google knows everything. Mm-hmm. But what can Google do?
Nothing.
It can't do anything. It doesn't have hands. It doesn't have feet. It's just a storehouse. The wisdom that's contained in the books of a library, or is it the knowledge that's contained in the books of the library? So unlocking the wisdom of the books in the library would be your capacity to take that information and do good with it.
Right. Because it's that old adage that says knowledge is power. But is that really true? Because you can have the knowledge, but unless it is that you're actually putting in the practical application, what power is there in having the knowledge? Because if you're a walking library or a walking dictionary or a walking encyclopedia, all you have is this information housed within. But if you can't use it to produce something outward, then there's no power in that, right? It's almost like knowing your history. And in order to not repeat the history, you would have to be able to apply what you know about said history in your everyday journey. So you have that knowledge of your history. Now what it is that you have to do is know how to think about it and then apply it so that you're not repeating certain aspects of that history that yielded certain types of results, so that history does not repeat itself. But as you know, humankind has been the actual example or the exemplar of repeating history time and time again, as if it's not been recorded or understood. So the question becomes, if you know the history, how likely are you bound to repeat said history in the current modern day? And it happens time and time again, unfortunately, which means that for some reason we are at a detriment to self and society when it is that we do not choose to not repeat history in order to produce some type of different result.
So people are making a conscious decision to ignore the likely outcome because they think that they won't make, quote unquote, the same mistake. But that may not be a wise decision, because it may not be that people made a mistake. It may be that that's the outcome of said action. You're processing it as they made a mistake, which you're about to make by doing the same action. Why do you think that the outcome will be any different? Because you're the one doing it? So like, if you touch that hot stove, you can get burned. They didn't get burned because they didn't touch the hot stove right. They got burned because the stove is hot. And you're about to make, well, they did it the wrong way. So I think people dismiss the lessons that history is taught. So there's a corner that would make a great restaurant. Yeah, right. But every restaurant that's ever been there has failed. Yeah, but we're going to have a better menu. Maybe it's not the food. It might be the location of the restaurant. Mm-hmm. You know.
And here lies the intersection and interweaving of critical thinking, right? A lot of how it is that we journey through life has its, I guess, its foundation on what we've been exposed to. For example, one of the quotes that Yoda states is related to the unusualness and of children in terms of their ability to really and truly be unrelenting when they have a goal that they've got their mind set on. And I want to say from the perspective of age 0 to approximately, I want to say roughly 5 years old. So from the perspective that children are absorbing all types of new information based on their environment and what is presented by their environment, we see that once they have something in their mind in terms of that goal, it will keep going until it is that they achieve what it is that they're seeking. Now, let's transition into adulthood. Because it is that we have been exposed to a lot of different types of things by the time we reach adulthood. Mm-hmm. That same perspective and goal-drivenness may be impacted by certain types of outcomes that we've experienced. So if we take the child versus the adult, the child is usually not going to be adverse or risk adverse to a no, or don't do that, or that could be dangerous, or it's something that becomes more of an adventure. Life is an adventure for them. And so them not knowing certain aspects of outcomes versus being more goal driven towards the value of what it is in their mind's eye they see as something occurring or them achieving something, such as crawling and then transitioning into walking. They fall many times, but that does not stop them from eventually walking. I'm just saying. Now, excuse me. When it is that us as adults may have, creative ideas and some goals that we've set for ourselves, we may pose our own obstacles based on lack of confidence in ourselves, which is a whole nother thing that I want to dive into. There's confidence over competence. Keep that in mind. And then having been told no or received some type of opposition towards us achieving said goals, that can stop us from going in or down certain pathways. So there's a stark difference between our youth, who can be more ambitious and unthreatened by the prospects of, I guess, negative results. The world is their oyster is a cliche. They, for the most part, are unrelenting in terms of what it is they seek to actually achieve. And I still have a little bit of that in myself, but I digress. Now, when it is that we turn into adults, we get halted again by what it is that we've been exposed to and who it is that we've been exposed to, which makes for a interesting journey in terms of what it is that we ultimately accomplish. And so I've been told plenty of no in my day, but every no now I know has its reasons. And as a matter of fact, I call it GPS, God's positioning system, where it's a route recalculation to my yes. So even closed doors are a blessing. So I'm learning, and then that heads towards growth and maturity of individuals, right? It doesn't really matter what age you are in terms of your maturity aspect. Really and truly, it's dependent on your mindset, and having a certain degree of understanding about self first, and then self-value within this life journey. Understandably so, that no one else has ever walked in your shoes, and understandably so, you can never walk in another person's shoes, making you as unique as a snowflake.
So wisdom, I'm looking at of course that's Baby Yoda behind you. But I'm thinking of the Yoda character. And of course, Yoda is very, very old.
Yes, he is. Like Methuselah in the Bible.
Right. So as they say, with age comes wisdom, because you learn over time, and you realize that certain things are the way they are. You learn how to manage wants, dreams, aspirations, and desires, and all these things. And you realize time that it takes for certain things to happen and evolve. And so the older one would think that the wiser one would get. I think wisdom does come with age, but that does not necessarily mean that all folks that are of age are wise, because there's a lot of old dummies out there.
That is not an absolute, sir.
And there
is not an absolute.
Right, and there are a lot of young people who are wise. In fact, you'll hear people say their wisdom is way outstrips their age. Such a young, old soul in that young person. And I find that when you meet these young people who have that old soul wisdom, is that they know how to apply what they've learned. They don't, they understand something didn't work well. Oh, let's make an adjustment. Okay. I don't need to keep doing this over and over again, because this does not work out right. And they listen, they're circumspect, and and the things that come to make one wise. I see there's a lot of stuff going on in the country right now, and it's very interesting. We're in the middle of what some would call a culture war, a cold culture war, borderline hot culture war, a cultural civil war. But a lot of the things that you see in flux are people experimenting and trying what they believe is new, but history of humanity shows certain things just don't work. But they have to discover that for themselves. It's like, I think sometimes the repeat cycle that human beings go through is the natural evolution of an individual. Like, people have to come to a place. It's sort of like walking. And, if you're going to walk, you're going to fall over. Right. And so every baby walks, then they run, then they ride a bike, and then they become president and fall. No, I'm sorry. Then they ride a bike, and then they drive a car.
Yep.
Then they see a scooter for sale. Oh, wow, that's a great way to get around. And then you ride the scooter in the rain and you say, what did I buy a scooter for? I have a car.
Right.
So you abandon the scooter, go back to the car. I mean, some things you have to, it's just you evolve. And I think as you go through this evolution, you gain the wisdom because you've had an opportunity to put certain things into practice, see what works, what doesn't work.
Interestingly enough, right, we've got a dynamic going on here with this technology that is valuable, but also can be deemed as detrimental. Our youth are being exposed to so many different types of, let's call it societal quandaries, right?
Yes.
Which then prompts them to question ethically what's right and what's wrong. And keeping this in mind that every single household on this planet is different, right?
Yes.
What their standards are, what the norms are through the line. Now, add on top of that, the exposure that they get through technology, all aspects of technology. Once you've seen something, you can't unsee it.
Right.
Now, through said exposure, good, bad, or indifferent, our youth are now happening to have to grapple with how it is that they can reconcile something being right or wrong. Because right is right, wrong is wrong. However, it's going to always be dependent on the individual and or their upbringing and or their let's say standards and or values. So there's again, life is like a huge algebraic equation, right? All of these variables come into play. Now, unique to us all is that we are classified as humankind. That's why I say that there's only one race, the human race, right? We can't even, everything else is really pretty much constructed from the perspective of economics, which is a whole other dynamic in our educational stream that needs to actually be taught. Because if you teach the economics of race, we've got a good conversation going there. Anyways,
very profitable, lucrative.
It is very. It's been very lucrative since it is that they discovered that divide and conquer was going to be the name of the game. Right, so there is no quid pro quo in that one right there. There's only winners and losers. However, I digress. Understandably so, our youth have a lot that they're being confronted with. Now, imagine for a second. Now, see, in my house, because there are no children, I only have one television. Right. But imagine that there is multiple individuals in the household, and every individual that has a room has their own multiple technologies. Smartphone, laptop, as well as television. If it is that it's not being strictly oversaw or supervised, where you got those parental controls involved, things could get dicey real quick, right? Types of conversation, types of visuals. We can go on and on. However, again, our students, our learners, our youth are being exposed to a whole lot more than our generations were exposed to, right? They don't even go outside to play nowadays, which is part and parcel of why it is that we have a lot of obesity and other type of health issues going on here. I consider myself decently healthy. I've been out and about. I used to deliver newspapers. I was out early in the morning, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, deliver papers, rain, sleet, or snow. My mom did not have a car, so I was out there in the snow. Yes, before people got out to shovel, yes, I was out there delivering those newspapers. And I still have that newspaper walk. I still have a pretty quick pace. As a matter of fact, I can outpace some 20-year-olds. Okay, so if you're gonna walk with me, you better walk and talk real swift, because otherwise you behind. Anyways, I digress. Again, our youth, they're taking on a lot. And so when they do have said wisdom that we spoke about earlier, it's because of what has been uniquely deposited into them by their creator, but also a lot of it can come from what they've been exposed to in life at such young ages.
Well, as you were talking, the thing came to mind, something we had said during the break. When we're talking about wisdom, when you talk about right and wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, that the old Bible verse, the one of the oldest publications on the planet, the fear of God, the fear of the Lord, is the beginning of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so right and wrong becomes such a relative thing. It's almost like situational ethics, right and wrong can be interpreted now by the individual. If it's right for me, it's right.
Right?
Who are you to tell me what my right is? So I declare and decree that I am right, therefore I am, and you can't challenge my right standing. And so, it's come down to beyond. It's worse than situational ethics. It's individual ethics.
Mm.
And so the individual has become deified. So you, without a standard to determine right and wrong, and that standard has to be outside of oneself.
Right.
And so, if you can remove the idea or the notion of some greater level of accountability, then it's not too long before self takes over the throne. And then from my throne, I give edict to the rest of the world. You will be as I say you should be. You will be as I want you to be, or you won't be. I will cancel you. So you've got to never mind dictators of countries. We have dictators of self. I am my own dictator, and anyone that doesn't agree with me, I will cancel out of existence by whatever force necessary. And that seems to be a lot of what's going on. So without there being a divine presence, right and wrong becomes very relative. And a lot of kids nowadays have no concept of God. They have no concept of anything, even religious. So it's quite a quandary. And kids don't go out. My kids don't go outside and play. My daughter, once the pandemic started, right before the pandemic, they used to always go out. They went out all the time. They went to the playground. In fact, I had to stay after school every day to the playground. I had to pull them off. Look, we got to go. Come on now. They want to be the last kids on the playground. But once the pandemic started, particularly with my youngest daughter, my second youngest daughter, her class, she went to school remotely. But her class, some of the kids were remote, some of the kids were at school. So she would zoom into the class, and every class that changed, she'd zoom into different class. So she would change classes like the kids at school did. If the teacher wasn't looking at the screen, then she didn't get admitted into the classroom, all that kind of madness. So long story short, she wasn't affected like that. Like her little sister. Her little sister, they had a whole academy. Every kid in the class was in the whole class the whole day. The teachers came and they remained a class.
That's a cohort. So that's a cohort model. So even in my dissertation journey, we had a cohort model. So I guess I was like cohort 11. As soon as it is that I took my little hiatus, I ended up being a cohort interloper, where I jumped into somebody else's cohort because I had took time off. But the cohort model allows for there to be a unique dynamic of relationships formed through those individuals that play a role in how it is that the group overall socializes. And so I like that. I digress. Go ahead and continue.
Well, now I'm glad you said that, because to this day, they went back to school, but they come home from school and they all gather back together. They do everything together online, just like they did as a class. They're all best friends. You know, her little boyfriend is in the cohort.
Okay.
I will put her business out. You know, she's like
she ain't gonna see this though. She ain't gonna see.
No, she's not. She's never gonna see it. She's the tallest kid in her class.
Okay.
And her little boyfriend is the shortest kid in the class. Online, they don't have no idea how tall each other are. You know, they're different ethnicities. All right. He's Latin. She's black. Right. And so. And so she's at least a foot taller. Okay. But online, you can't tell how tall anybody is. You just know you like these people. And all of these kids they're all best friends. They go to birthday parties together and things. When they're at school now, they see each other out, you know. But they come home, they get right online. And I see them being like this into the future, because now they're going out of the 5th grade into the 6th grade. So a lot of them are going to split up, but they can all come back together online. They just won't be able to see each other like they do now that, you know, school's back together. But they were a whole cohort. And what you said makes a lot of sense. 7 was an interlope. She would jump in and out of cohorts. Right. It all makes, when you said that, everything made perfect sense. So she feels like an outsider, like she's not part of that group, because she isn't. Yeah. And so when you said that, I have to. It changes everything.
When I jump back in, bro, I definitely made myself a part of the group, because I had business to complete. Listen, I was there. My goals were set. I'm here to finish. Let me get this coursework done. And from there, they gave me my wings and I could go off into the sunset and begin the whole data collection process. But, you know, for individuals that find themselves going in and out of different groups, you have to identify how it is that at that moment, by you being there, you are there for a reason. Your presence does have purpose. And that's the thing in terms of us actually using this aspect of it, good interweaving, confidence in self, and the tie into competence. Confidence in self in terms of understanding who you are and understanding that when you're in a specific environment amongst other individuals, you are valuable in terms of being there at that point in time, just as everybody else. You're unique, just like everyone, but your presence there adds value, right? So the question becomes, does an individual understand that at that given moment, right? Knowing that our youth are still under development in terms of their maturity and getting to understand their likes and dislikes and understanding themselves. That's a journey. It's not a destination. It's a journey. It's ongoing, right? So even beyond our youth, we're still like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. Blah, blah, blah. But anyways, it requires for introspection. Now, here's the thing. A person can be really, 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 really smart, which means that based on their smartness of a specific thing or multiple things, they have competence in that. They can carry it out, get it done, get results. However, if you have competence but no confidence, do you get that job?
should you have that job? Because now this ties back to what we were talking about in earlier in the program. If you are equipped and trained but lack confidence, then you will not be competent. Is it fair? Is that fair to say?
That is very fair. That is very fair.
And if we have people conditioned to be managed, then most people at work would lack confidence.
Absolutely.
Because they don't want to make any mistakes, and they are more in their minds. They have determined, I will make a mistake, so I'm not going to do anything until I talk to my boss. Well, I'm going to wait until someone tells me what to do, because I don't want to make the wrong decision because I don't have confidence in my capacity to make a decision. So now I am not competent. So saying one's competent means nothing if you don't demonstrate it with an action. Would that be fair?
That is very much fair. That is very much fair, which means that in regards to a proper alignment, competence has to have courage aligned with it, as well as confidence. Because if it is that the confidence and the courageous aspect or attribute is missing, it makes, ideally, if you think about it, and I'm agreeing with you, it does make one incompetent, because having it goes back to the knowledge versus wisdom. You have it inward, but you're not applying it outward, right? So you've got to be able to make certain moves, practical actions. You've got to apply it in order for it to be demonstrated as being competence. Otherwise, no action being taken based on your knowledge is going to render results that have you classified as being incompetent. Pretty much.
The incompetent. So we're if you rob people of their critical thinking abilities because you don't want them thinking. We don't want them thinking. It's clear that there's a whole group of someone's making decisions that don't want people thinking. They don't want them to think. They want them to be managed. And the policies and the procedures could change this afternoon. And everyone's on board with it. They don't question. They don't, what. To the degree that, if we go back, if you have people standing in a hallway outside a classroom and they're thinking, we should go in. Yes, but we're being told to wait. Okay. So we've come to a place where we just stop thinking critically. And that will be our ultimate undoing if we continue down that course. Because ultimately, you have a nation of people who lack confidence. We're and therefore everyone is searching for some sort of meaning. So
searching for somebody to tell them what to do next.
Right. What should I eat? What should I buy? What should I?
Right.
Right.
They're looking to be led. Now check this out. So I remember clearly in elementary school, they used to have, and every class, every grade had a different way of doing this, but they had us to line up for everything, right? Having said that, I'm a transition. Have you ever been in the grocery store and there's only a certain number of cashier lanes that are open. And there's a huge line. Now, check this out. Another cashier comes in to open up a lane. The question becomes, do you stand in the long line or do you immediately eye out who's about to open up which lane in terms of the additional cashier and become the first one in line for that? I would be the one nowadays to be looking for the cashier opening because I'm waiting. As a matter of fact, I've been in line and I've asked, are there any additional cashiers that can open up? Because this line is getting long. No, I'm not one. If you hear that random voice in the grocery store and you look behind and you see me, that was me. Yes, that would be me. Because here's the thing. Y'all see, and then none of the cashiers are calling for assistance. I'm like, can you call someone to open up an additional line, right? It's like, you see the line getting long. It's not like you don't see this line getting longer. You just not going to call for assistance? Really? This is what we're doing now, right? And so it lends to individuals' competence or incompetence to move into action mode, right? You know how to cashier. You also have eyes to see that the line is getting longer. You also know that you have coworkers out on the floor that could assist with this line, but you choose not to call for assistance. At that point, I'm deeming you as incompetent because you're not handling the circumstances per us being in these long lines when it is that you have additional individuals to assist in whittling down the line or manage the line, right? So yeah. Oh, this is a great tie-in. This is a great tie-in. You've got to be able to act on the resources and be courageous enough and confident in the decision that you're making to make said either statement and or actions so that we can get some things done. Even if you get chewed out afterwards, like it's still got to be said. It's got to be said. It's got to be done. Regardless, it's still, otherwise, what's the worst case scenario? You've got a lot of irate individuals. You've got people that don't return back to the store, which is going to cost you money. You've got people switching out of the district because they don't feel as though they are valued enough to have their issues brought to the forefront and addressed. Yeah, we could go down the line with this. But again, having the knowledge and not taking proper steps in terms of action-oriented steps means that there is a degree of incompetence there. Yeah, you can't get around it. All right, we done solved the world's problems. Hooray!
Another episode in the can. Solving the world's problems one at a time.
One at a time. We always think in terms of solutions, and that's another thing. Individuals can identify problems and talk about them until they're blue in the face. But at what point in time are we going to identify some solutions that we would like to apply towards said problems? And then if it is that we need to modify said solution, go about doing that. Instead of saying, it is what it is. And unfortunately, even multiple generations later, the problems are still here. Yet and still, we've got the best and brightest in positions of leadership that are not solving for said problems. I think that in itself is a crime. That's just me. That's just me though.
Well, you're right. It's the old, well, we're trying, and therein lies.
What Yoda says, do
or do not.
There is no try.
There is no try. There is no try. So, to swing back around and pick up Elon, I want to go to Mars. Oh, you can't go to Mars. You can't. I'm going to Mars. Okay, so so you do what's necessary to get there. You go to the moon. You grand vision calls for grand, resources. I mean, all of the things that are necessary. If you have a big problem, then there's big opportunities to solve them. We don't look at challenges as opportunities. We look at challenges as burdens or work.
That's where the paradigm shift comes in now.
We should be putting in front of us the grandest of challenges and then resourcing those things so that we could get stuff done. We purpose to do this. We purpose to do that. And, move toward, are you going to help me do this? If not, that's cool. I need to find someone else. And until you get it done, as opposed to, well, I don't know, we could try. Then that means you're not going to succeed. You're not going to succeed. You're trying. You're trying. And that's not good enough. Anything less than a deliverable is failure.
Yes. And unfortunately, in all streams of society, there's too many individuals and positions that can be held accountable for deliverables, right? If you're presenting me with something that is just a template that has no deliverable, I'm sorry, sir, ma'am, please go back to the drawing board and tell me what it is that we're supposed to be getting from this. If I'm spending $3.3 million for online tutoring for students who did not bode well in an online environment to begin with, how in the world is that going to be a satisfactory deliverable or outcome for students that don't perform or even log on to an online environment to begin with? Not to mention the fact that we did not have the buy-in by the parents to get the quote-unquote 4,500 students into said online tutoring. So we've got problems on the onstart prior to us even coming part of the quote-unquote solution, which means that we could have initially actually had on-ground tutoring occurring via Kaplan or whatever tutoring that we have, West Hartford, whatever the learning centers are locally, but that $3.3 million price tag. However, what was stated was that it was too costly. However, if we look at the fact that less than 1% of the students that they plan to have tutoring did not get the tutoring, means that Kaplan and any other learning center would have been well within the budget where they could have on premises tutoring face to face, which would have worked out way better. You can't solve a problem based on circumstances that were presented whereby the outcomes are not favorable. If it is that you want to tutor me and I don't log on, does tutoring occur? The answer is in the question. No, it does not.
Well, we've shifted I think we've shifted, well, maybe not as a society, but large portions of the society. We've shifted from deliverables to the try.
Oh, okay.
We no longer, the deliverables are not of concern. There's an excuse for failure to deliver. We were trying. Incremental. An incremental move toward the deliverable is accepted. That's mediocrity, and then applauded. Oh,
that's failure. No, let's know what it is. That's failure. We're not even calling it mediocrity. That's failure.
Failure, right? So, if you don't deliver, you haven't succeeded, and if you can't deliver, you don't need to be present. I mean, the old ways of this is what we're asking for, This is what we should get.
Right.
If we don't get what we're asking for, there's been failure. It's not personal.
No.
You can tell whether or not you got what you did. We ordered a pound of rice and you brought us a singular grain. Well, we were trying and then no.
If I go to the deli and I order Virginia baked ham, Virginia honey baked ham, and you give me bologna, we got a problem.
But it's lunch meat.
It is lunch meat. There's a lot of things that fall under the umbrella of lunch meat, but specifically per the contract was the request for Virginia honey baked ham. Thank you. So no. I mean, again, it goes back to taking ownership. When it is that the contract is designed and going through and all the rudimentary steps that we put into place, you stop to think about, as an outsider looking in, here's the thing. You did not deliver. Now, make good on it. Make good on it. I mean, there's too much embracing of you call it mediocrity, but I call it failure.
It is.
Here's the thing. And mediocrity is lightening the blow. But let's put it this way: when it is that certain things should be carried out and the results should be based on what was presented as the deliverable, here's the caveat. If there was no deliverable in the actual contract identified, where if I look at that contract, this is what you're supposed to be guaranteeing, as well as a clause for refund, as well as a clause of non-renewal of said contract, yeah, we got problems. Something's going on within the intricacy of the decision making, as well as the actual voting of said policies and or contracts that needs to be questioned. Because if you're saying yay or yes and not objecting to something that you know clearly should be questioned, right? Students didn't do well online. These are the same students that we want to tutor online. Where is the logic in that? Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's look at why it is that made sense, right? Or was it just a way for us to spend the money to get it off the books, to say that we've allocated this amount of funds to help X number of students? However, full well knowing that you would have to have parents sign off on that, and having not actually had that buy-in from the parents, you went along with that anyways, as well as having members vote in favor without knowing that the buy-in by all 4,500 of those students' parents was there. Something's wrong. Seriously wrong. Seriously.
Well, accountability is the key word, and accountability without consequence isn't accountability. There has to be oversight. There has to be consequence. People have to have confidence in their own abilities and capacities to do the jobs for which they are in position to do, and show a little bit of leadership and some initiative and have some courage. A lot of people just don't have courage to speak up, courage to speak out, courage to ask questions, and courage to push back when someone says no.
If you're not able to challenge those things that are remained on that remain on the table as questions and then vote in opposition of said proposal based on those questions not being answered, you lack the courageous fortitude to really be doing what's in the best interest of the community that you serve. You've got to vote no if they didn't answer your questions. You can't say yay to that. That's crazy, because each person gets one vote. And the moment you say yes, it's going to be real hard to try to retract that yes. So there's got to be some individuals, again, you're right, the courageousness to challenge the controversial omission of answers to questions still left on the table.
Oh, yes. All right, Dr. Mya Bowen is here every Wednesday as we dive deep into all kinds of things. It's Morning Talk. We talk every morning here on accesstv.org, on Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, other social media. So join us at 8 o'clock Mondays through Friday. Actually, every morning Monday. 7 days a week. Join us here join us here every day at 8 o'clock. Something new every day. And on Wednesdays, Dr. Bowen's here to help us with the next new thing. All right, thank you, Dr. Bowen.
Thank you. This was a good talk. We covered a lot of dynamics here. Hopefully it is that some of these solutions can actually be thought about and actually then applied, making for a situation that is seemingly incompetent to become competent.
There you go. Good words to end on. So, my friends, we will see you next time. Join me tonight for Bible study at 10 if you so choose. And we'll be back then with Light Source Victory Television. Until then, my friends, you all have a fabulous rest of your day. Dr. Bowen, see you next time. Bye-bye, folks.
Peace.